Joining us today on Money in Motion is Don Bubar, the president and CEO of Avalon Rare Metals, which is a Toronto-based company in the middle of constructing a mine that will be in operation in 2015. Don, thanks for joining us today. Now, when you talk about rare earth minerals, there's about basically 17 of these, but are you going to focus on just some of these, like heavy or light rare earth minerals? What will be the primary focus among what you would like to mine?
Well, every rare earth miner will produce the whole series of them. They all occur together in every deposit, but what varies from place to place is the relative proportions of the heavy rare earths and the light rare earths. In most deposits, the heavy rare earths are only there in trace amounts, but our deposit has an unusually high proportion of the heavy rare earths at some 25% of the total. So that's going to allow us to produce more of the heavy rare earths than many other producers are able to. So we'll offer a more complete mix of the rare earth elements to the marketplace.
Is there any particular kind that are the most prominent in the market that sort of the average Joe and Mary are most familiar with?
The ones that are most important now are neodymium and terbium and dysprosium that are vital to the high-strength permanent magnet applications that are now so important in the miniaturization of electric motors and generators, and that technology now being vital to electric and hybrid car technology.
Well, it's interesting now that the rare earth, I guess, business is sort of trying to take off outside of China, I guess primarily because China is cutting back on its quotas. What do you make about the lack of supply, and is this basically one of the primary reasons that it looks like a good bet now to go into the mining business?
Well, exactly. What's happening is the market's having to adjust to this sudden change in the demand profile for these rare earth elements, and it takes the supply side some time to be able to react. It takes 10 to 12 years to bring a new producing mining processing operation into production, and so it takes quite a while, and you're finding now companies scrambling to be able to do that. In our case, Avalon got started about 6 years ago. We got our pre-feasibility study done last year, so that makes us relatively advanced, relatively close to being able to serve that new demand within 5 years. It sounds like a long time away, but actually that makes us relatively close to production.
Well, it's interesting because looking at your stock numbers, it's up somewhere around $9. I think earlier in the year, around January, it was about $7, and it was just less than $1 not too long ago. So even though you're not producing, the stock price is basically just shot up tremendously. What do you make of that?
Well, it's pretty simple, really. Because of the shortage of supply now in the face of increased demand, prices are escalating very rapidly. In the last year or so, rare earth prices as a group were up close to 1,000%. So that rapid appreciation of prices is translating into sort of a more valuable asset in the ground, in case of a deposit like ours. And so that more valuable assets being reflected in the valuation of our company in the marketplace, as well as other similar companies with rare earth assets.
Now, why do you think that China has been the predominant supplier of the materials around the world? Is it basically a labor issue? Why have they been so dominant, basically supplying it all around the world?
A low cost structure, basically. They had the benefit of one really unique mineral deposit where they could produce the rare earths at a very low cost, combined with lower labor costs than in the Western world. Lower environmental standards historically allowed them to price these commodities much more cheaply than they could be by other Western producers such as Molycorp. So that gave them a big competitive advantage and allowed them to dominate the supply side historically. But what's happening now, of course, is demand for the rare earths inside China is increasing very rapidly too, as it is for most commodities actually. And so China now is basically having to use most of the production that they have there for their own domestic demand.
All right. Well, Don Bubar, the president and CEO of Avalon Metals, the Toronto-based company. Thank you very much for joining us on Money in Motion.